Authority meeting on the 21st of April 2026, meeting beginning at 4:33. I'd like to start by saying and advising all that an audio-visual recording is being made of this meeting. I also remind everyone present to be respectful and considerate towards others attending the meeting. Language or behaviour that could be perceived as offensive, inflammatory or threatening to any person attending the meeting or to those listening in the recording will not be tolerated. We have councillors in the room, we have a quorum. Apologies from Councillor Campbell. Councillor Reynolds is slightly at work on the way from work. Item number 3 on the agenda, confirmation of the minutes of the 14th of April. Recommendation that the minutes of the Sorell Planning Authority SPA meeting held on the 14th of April 2026 be confirmed. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Nichols and Councillor Reid to second. Any comments on those minutes? No. All those in favour of the recommendation? Unanimous, thank you very much. In considering the following land use planning matters, the Sorell Planning Authority intends to act as the planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. Item 5 in Land Use Planning, 5.1, 5.2022.184.1, visitor accommodation, restaurant and road upgrades, 297 Primrose Sands Road. Primrose Sands. Can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Reid and Councillor Dronis. Thank you very much. The recommendation is there before you. Can I open the floor to comments, questions? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I'd appreciate there's a long backstory to this and some technicalities. I'd appreciate an overview of the recommendations to begin with, please.
Through the Mayor. So this application was made under the former planning scheme, the interim planning scheme, and it's assessed under that planning scheme. It was on the basis that the application was deemed valid when that former planning scheme was still in effect. The application was advertised some time ago. A number of representations were received. The application was then put on hold, agreement between the applicant and council staff to investigate a number of issues that were raised in the representation period. Subsequent to that, a number of pieces of correspondence were received, which were included in the attachments to the report. To get to the recommendation though, we're of a view that this application as it stands and in the form that it's put to us doesn't satisfy what the interim planning scheme is requiring with regard to how the use and development relates to the existing character of the area. That's the principal concern.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification through the Mayor to the planner. Would your assessment be different if it was under the old planning scheme when the original application was made, or would it still be similar recommendation?
Through the Mayor, The planning scheme we have in effect today for any new application and the interim planning scheme are different. They have very different criteria for this type of use in the respective zones under the two planning schemes. So the assessment would be different. Certainly, the older planning scheme has a greater focus and emphasis on being compatible with an established rural character, which is the principal issue here. The new planning scheme emphasises compatibility with agricultural values, property more so. So they do have a very different
assessment criteria, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's criteria to assess it, though, not necessarily an opinion based, or is it open to opinion from?
No. The performance criteria, they are an objective assessment. Yeah.
Sorry, can I a couple of questions? Is that all right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm relatively supportive of a development in that area, and this development from the outset looked pretty good. But of course, we are acting as a planning authority, so we do have some rules and guidelines, and of course take our staff's advice. This week or the last couple of weeks, there's been a plethora of emails sent to councillors. I'm sure we've all received them. One of those was, I believe, from the proponent, stating that there was, I guess, a new or a renewed plan. Did that form part of a new development application or an amendment to the current development application, or is that purely just sent to say we would look at changing? Are you aware of the approach?
Look, through the mayor, I'm not across any recent correspondence, but anything received before the agenda was finalised fully across and have reviewed. So I guess in response to the representations, there were a number of issues raised. A particularly important one was from some issues raised by Tasmania Fire Service. To respond to that issue, the proponent had to make changes to the design. We're in a position where historically in the past, if there were changes to proposals after advertising, we would re-advertise them. There's been some Supreme Court decisions that's prevented that practice. Essentially, the court found that the legislation gives you one chance to advertise and one chance only. So we can't. There were then some further discussions around what changes could be made that are sort of that are not too far removed from what was originally advertised that could be considered, and they have that version of those plans have been considered in this assessment. So that's with some lesser number of units than what was originally advertised, and a few little relatively minor changes to the position of the building. So that has been assessed.
So that's been considered in your recommendation as well to this. Okay. And is there a process? Would that normally trigger a new development application process, or are you changing it under minor amendment sort of act legislation?
No, we as a legal principle, we can have the application's been advertised. The planning authority making this decision can make changes to that, conditions on them, make relatively minor changes that aren't substantive and don't risk adversely impacting someone in a way that they weren't notified about beforehand. So we can make minor variations that can certainly be considered, which is part of this. But that's without a new application. Remember, that's just within this framework. Any more substantive sort of changes, are a new process altogether.
Yeah. So, sorry, one final one. So, if this was to be, I guess, supported, your recommendation, the new process would be there's nothing stopping the applicant from putting a new development application forward in the future for that.
Through the mayor, look, no, there's principled level. There's three sort of options for any proponent. They either can lodge a fresh application, accept the decision, or appeal the decision.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hopkins.
Thank you, Matt. As it's been pointed out, I think it's really important to note that it is under the interim planning scheme that this has been assessed against. And that really matters because it is much stricter and more subjective to visitor accommodation in rural areas, particularly amongst development intensity and rural character. The key test is whether development is in the interim planning scheme. That key test of development under intensity and respect of rural character, in the case, does conclude that the scale and linear proposal fails to meet that test, not because tourism is bad or inappropriate, but because the interim scheme places heavy weight on such. I want to be clear that I too would be supportive of the intention of this project. Primrose Sands is changing and it's modernising. We are seeing increased permanent population, growing visitation and rising demand for services and infrastructure. That change is real and Council is actively planning for it. I also recognise the economic reality facing rural landholders. Operating agricultural land, particularly lower quality grazing lands, is becoming increasingly difficult without diversification. Farm-based tourism, hosted accommodation or visitor experiences are now a part of making a rural operation viable long term. I see that we want to see investment in this municipality, and we want projects that create jobs, attract visitors and contribute to the social and economic life of our municipality. It is critical, however, it is a crucial point that economic benefit and strategic intent cannot override the planning scheme that we are legally required to apply. The interim planning scheme does not reflect modern rural tourism policy particularly well. By contrast, the current planning scheme, which we are not permitted to use for this application, is more flexible. It better recognises rural tourism and farming diversification and assessment proposals. More on land capability use and operational impacts, as we've heard. So my position is that I'm supportive of rural tourism and investment in principle. I acknowledge that Primrose Sands is evolving and changing. I recognise the pressure on farmers and farming and the need for diverse income. And it is not a judgment, or the rejection should not be a judgment on the concept, the proponent or the value of the investment. It is a consequence of the scheme that applies. I recognise the strong feelings from the community on this proposal. I want to be clear that my comments are guided not by taking sides, but by applying planning rules that we are bound by, while staying committed to long-term outcomes that support community sustainability, viable land use, and opportunities for the future of our area. There's a comment there.
Thank you, Michael. Is there anything further? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Locans for those comments, particularly the last points about as the planning authority having to apply the rules as they currently exist, and that's the basis for our decision today.
Just a quick word. I'd just like to thank the community members that contacted me, registering their concerns about this proposal. And I stand with them. All of the people that contacted me, bar one, all were in favour of a refusal of a supporting of the recommendation, which is to refuse this development, and I stand with them on that. Thank you.
Councillor Tronis.
Yes, I agree entirely with what my neighbouring councillor has just said. I have picked out a few things from the report, so please bear with me. First of all, our strategic plan says to facilitate regional growth. I'd like to see something like, but not at any cost, in addition to that. As I said, I've picked out quite a few things and I'll just read them. There are a lot of discrepancies exist between the plans and the supporting planning report. The report says a minimum of 20 metres is proposed from the cabins to the Crown foreshore, I think. That was correct, Shane, I think. But the plans show as little as 3.5 metres and several for the several cabins to Crown land. The TFS has concerns about setbacks too. On page 18, without compliant hazard management areas, TFS advises that the proposal would be unable to obtain building approval, which was quite interesting. Traffic impact assessment recommended road improvements, but they are not reflected in the planning submission. And what else did I find? Reduction of cabins from 32 to 26. 26 is still too many as far as I'm concerned. A number of changes have been proposed in response to the issues raised. Supporting documentation does not reflect the changes. Page 33, the second last paragraph sums it all up if you want to read that. And I think, Shane, you've already said that the applicant can put a fresh development application in or accept the decision of council. Thank you.
Councillor Mira-Posada.
Thank you. We have seen this development already for a long period of time. I had the pleasure to attend a community meeting when this was presented previously. Well, first presented, I'm sorry. There was a couple dozen of neighbors from neighboring to the property. I listened to all their concerns. So far, in the time that this development application started, I haven't received a single correspondence in support of it. And it's been, I believe it was about 60 or so letters that I got last time. Can't remember the amount, but, and I also talked to a lot of people. So I can see that the work that our planning team has done really reflects what the community is expecting about this being refused. I can see, of course, I've weighted both sides, and I am really in alignment with what our planning team has put forward to us, which is refusal. So I just want to say that in this case, I can see a real alignment between the planning team putting this refusal and the planning scheme protecting what the community really wants.
Thank you. Thank you for those thoughts and comments. Anything further before we put this to the vote? No? In which case, then, can we put this recommendation to, that the recommendation be accepted, and the recommendation is to refuse this proposal. So, all those in favour of the recommendation? All those against? So, abstain? One abstain. One against.
Abstention.
Abstention.
Thank you.
So that's as per recommendation then. Thank you. Right, thank you folks. On to item 5.2. Land use planning approval, miscellaneous, thank you, amendments bill 2026. The recommendation that council resolve to endorse the submission as provided in the report. Can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Reid and Deputy Mayor Larkins to second. Thank you. The introduction is there. Are there any questions or comments to our planning officer? Yeah.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, through me. That all seems straightforward, and I'm very pleased to see we're making a submission to put our particular point of view. Is there anything that could have been added or we would have liked to see in addition to this process, or is it really the process is in line with Sorell's best interests?
Through the Mayor, in terms of the first question, I think there's plenty of scope for further review of and reform of the planning system, and particularly Lupa, which is quite old and it's been modified and amended many times. So I'm one of the many planners that probably think it's time for the whole thing to be started afresh. But these amendments, there's 6 elements, and they're all quite logical changes that will either just simplify some fairly basic amendments and updates to the planning schemes, or otherwise just make the planning system work a little bit easier, so improving some clarities around timeframes and the like. So it's positive to see a bill from the government that does make sense and is targeted at making things better for councils and the development industry.
And one follow-up question, if I may. Have we, in our submission, made note of the support for a wholesale review? Is it worth including it? Or is it appropriate to
Through the
include
Mayor,
it?
I think we haven't made those positions on some of the DAP submissions and those sorts of things, and expressed that view previously.
It seems very sensible. I'd be supportive of adding that in if council agreed.
Take your advice on that one.
Happy to add that in.
Right, anything further? Right, the recommendation that the council resolve to endorse the submission as provided in the report. All those in favour of the recommendation, please? Unanimous, thank you very much. We now move on to item 5.3, which is dwelling outbuilding, change of use, existing dwelling to visitor accommodation and 2 additional visitor accommodation cabins at 4 Marston Lane, Copping. Can I have a mover for that, please? Deputy Mayor Larkins and Councillor Nichols, thank you. This is before us because the owner and the applicant is a councillor who's not here today, not with us today at the table. Do we have any questions on this development? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. More on context rather than the development itself. But a couple of times there's mention in the report of visitor accommodation being a positive for rural areas in terms of bringing visitor activity and economic benefits to rural areas, diversifying income, etc., which is terrific. Just wondering, in the context of what we all know is a worsening housing crisis, for the Sorell context, are we considering some sort of balance in terms of the appropriate mix of visitor accommodation and building for housing? Or is that that's a strategic conversation?
I would say that's a strategic conversation.
Yes. I think I've answered my own question.
Yeah.
But, okay, suffice to say then that the situation for this development application raises those issues for the broader council, so it's something we need to consider.
Anything more on this application? No? Right, all those in favour of this application with the listed conditions, please. Unanimous, thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of today's Planning Authority meeting at 4:59. Thank you very much.